Welcome back to Switch to Linux. It is Monday, and it is time for another Linux Top 5. And today we are going to talk about 5 desktop environments in Linux in 2019. So if you are considering making the switch from Windows or from Mac over into the Linux world, welcome. One of the great things about Linux is you can really choose your workflow, your setup, your environment. And the desktop environment, more than the distro, will kind of determine how you use your system. And we're going to look at 5 popular desktop environments. There are a lot more than this, but this will just kind of wet your feet. You know, do you want to stick with something very traditional feel to you? Or do you want to go with something that's completely different? How can you experiment? These are the questions we're going to be looking at. So we're going to look at 5 of my favorite desktop environments. Now, where possible, I pulled a distro from whoever developed the desktop. The exception to that is our number 2. I'll get into why I didn't do that in a moment. But let's go ahead and jump right on in with our desktops. Number 1 is Cinnamon. This is my absolute favorite desktop environment. The current version is Cinnamon 4.0, and the Cinnamon desktop is developed by the Linux Mint team. So what we're going to do is head right on over to the desktop on Linux Mint 19.1 and have a quick look at Cinnamon 4. Now, the reason I like this desktop the most is because it is set up and configured just like a Windows, which I have found in all of my various testing of different workflows and environments. This is the environment that I am the absolute most productive in. So we have a basic menu, just like Windows. We have some pin to the panel items here. Now, this is one of the things I'm not a huge fan of, is pinning to the panel. I want more quick launch features. So one of the things, if you're running Linux Mint, that you won't find on some other instances of Cinnamon 4 is if you head on over to the welcome screen, you can actually come down to desktop layout and you can pick the more traditional, which is kind of like your old Windows 95, quick launch bar, things like that, or you can go with the modern here. Now, I actually have a video about how you can stick with the modern, which definitely looks way better than the traditional, but still set it up like the traditional. If that's your thing, you can take a look at the description in the video here below, and you can have a look at how to actually do that on Cinnamon. But the look and the feel is very nice, very modern. Not only that, but the Cinnamon desktop does contain several modern features, such as online account integration. So what this means is that if you are using various ones of these online accounts, you can link them in and it will integrate certain portions of the system. So Google and Nextcloud, for example, will sync all of your contacts, all of your calendar events. It will sync your emails automatically, directly. Well, I'm not 100% sure email on Nextcloud. Google, I think it does. But everything else, I know on Nextcloud, it does sync all of the other things, including giving you a place to drop your files. So that is one of the greatest online things, and several of these desktops that we're going to be looking at can now do this. It's just one of the things that I point out here, that this is one of those integration points. Now, Cinnamon itself, like I said, you can set it up here. You can also set it up differently. You can move the panels around different places, of course. I, of course, throw my little minimize all windows down in the bottom, just like the Windows has, because I use that very frequently. I work off the desktop when I'm actually doing things. The other things that you will find inside of Cinnamon itself is they do have a suite of tools that are very good. You will get some things like disks is generally installed. We do have our file manager, which is called Nemo. So Nemo is just an excellent file manager as far as I'm concerned, and it's definitely one of my favorites. You also have cool things from the Linux Mint team, which would be things like your USB writers, so image writers, USB stick formatters, things like that. So there's a lot of tools in here. Going back to that system settings menu, this is how you change your settings. We have everything from our appearance, our desktop backgrounds, theme files, various preferences, which includes applets, which are things and tools you can put on your panel, and desklets, which are little widget desktop things. We have a variety of other tools. We have startup applications, Windows, workspaces, preferred applications. We have some hardware settings, graphics tablets, Bluetooth, networking, display, and then of course we have some administration, including your groups, software sources, driver manager, firewalls. All these are nice types of tools that you can set up in. Now, of course, on the desktop, this is one of these desktop environments that does actually keep our desktop icons. Some desktops are trying to move away from that. It's a little frustrating, but it is a thing. But over here, you can actually come down to customize. You can set your auto arrange. So you can auto arrange your icons or not. You can set them to go vertical or horizontal. You can sort things by name, by size. Of course, if I turn off auto arrange, I can now move things around if I want to. Well, probably not while that setting's on, but you can still move some things around. You can reverse sort. And there's also a icon sizer that you can do. So if you want your icons bigger or smaller, you can go ahead and do that. And I believe this is your spacing. So what kind of spacing do you want on your icons? So you can go ahead and set your spacing on either direction as well. So you have a lot of different desktop settings. If you click in on our desktop settings, this is what will turn on or turn off your various folders that are important to you. This is why I like the Cinnamon desktop. It gets me exactly what I want in exactly the way. Now this is available on a lot of different distributions. It's just that this is the distro that builds the Cinnamon desktop. Number 2, KDE Plasma. This is one of my favorite desktops, and I've run it a lot of different systems, a lot of different ways. I love the widgetability of it. Now, this is the one that if you want to get the distro that develops this, you want to be running KDE Neon. I did not do that today. We're actually going into the Gentoo world, and we're going to be looking at Calculate Linux. And the reason I'm using that one instead of Neon is simply because this is the next system I'm going to run on my one PC, and so I already have a development version built. And so I didn't have to download it, install it, or download it and just run it up in a just as a live key. I already have this guy built, and so we're going to show you what it looks like. Now, this one here, this particular version has the panel at the top. Some of your installs will have the panel at the bottom. It really depends on what you want. This is one of the more customizable ones. Of course, you saw down here, this is actually a function of the distribution I'm running, not specifically of the desktop itself. The Plasma desktop has with it a lot of really neat features. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go into the menu there, and I'm going to unlock widgets. We'll talk about what that means in a moment. All right, so one of the things I really like most about Plasma is just how nice and elegant everything can look. So you can do anything from a very modern, flat UI to something that's just older looking or flashy looking, heavy transparencies. There's so many really cool things you can do with it. It also has a lot of your icons built in, so it's just a beautiful system to look at, as you can see from my context menu. Now, this instance here, we have it set up to be running with icons on the desktop. There is a toggle switch that you can turn that off. So either way, in fact, this kind of brings us to what a lot of people say about Plasma. It's probably its biggest, very valid criticism is you can get lost in the settings. So each of these guys, you come down, and then now there's 4 different settings under the themes. We have multiple settings under the colorations. So there's so many different settings in here. Now, I love this because I like customizing my desktop. Now, I don't do it all the time, but I'll come in, I'll customize my desktop, and then I'll generally just leave it. Now, this does support online accounts. Not every one of these distributions that you get Plasma on is going to out of the box, but you can actually support your online accounts with it as well. does not work quite as elegantly as the Gnome desktops or their derivatives like Cinnamon we've already looked at, and we'll look at some of the other ones. But one of the other features I really like about it is we had talked about widgets. So this is an entirely widgetized, fully customizable desktop. There's two main factors here. One is with our various menus, you can actually create widgets. So if I hit my add widgets, I get this bar over here, and there's so many different items I can grab these and just move them around. Now, we talked about applets and desklets on Cinnamon briefly. Now, these ones here are kind of shared. I can put them anywhere on the desktop or anywhere on a panel, so anything here will have some form or another. Now, the other function here is that the widgets are all related. So if you right-click on a widget with that widget's unlocked that I did earlier, there's alternatives to a variety of different widgets. So you can actually choose different types of menus that you have. So this is, of course, different types of settings on the clocks. You have a variety of different menus. This one here is just a very simple searchable menu, but if I hit my alternatives even on my menus, you have things like the application launcher, which is my favorite one of the menus on this particular desktop. It's just this very modern, elegant type system. Again, it supports your search as well. You know, here's our computer, here's our history, here's our logout screens, applications, favorites. And then you also have the dashboard, which kind of gives us a feel that's more like this. We have our recents, we have all our applications, and then you have your applications under your different settings. So very nice setup no matter what. You can always come in here and make these adjustments no matter what we have. I think this was the default menu for this distribution. So this supports... it does have, by default, single click to open things up. And some people really like that. Some people don't. If you get used to it, it is a time saver. If you're not used to it, it's a little frustrating. Again, you can toggle this stuff on or off. The downside is, where do you figure out how to toggle all these things on or off? And that comes back to that criticism that we sometimes encounter on this particular distro. Now, this uses, for the file manager, we have Dolphin is the default. Some people really like Dolphin. It's very fluid in its just ability to scale things. I find it to be slightly more clunky for my taste, but it is overall a pretty good system. As far as the tools, anything developed by like the KDE team is effectively like a tool. So you have your K applications, K mail, K conversation, K, lots of Ks, which are all great. Kodi is not one of them, by the way. These are great applications. It's kind of an alternative to your GTK applications. Very good systems, very good applications. There's some argument, you know, which ones are better, the K applications, GTK applications, things like that. I'll leave that to the individual choices of the user, but this is definitely one of my favorite desktop environments. It works very well, highly customizable, very easy to adjust and edit pretty much everything. Downsides, of course, there's just so many settings and options, you can easily get lost, but man, you can set this thing up any way you want. So that is our second desktop, which is KDE Plasma. Number 3, Budgie. Budgie is a great new modern desktop. It's based on Gnome, but it gives us back some of the things that we've lost in Gnome. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But Budgie is developed by the Solus team, which on top of developing their desktop, Solus itself is a entirely new Linux family built on its own system. So it's not based on Arch or Debian or anything else. It is its own thing, and they have done an absolutely amazing job with this distribution. Definitely one of my favorite ones. If something went totally crazy with some of the other distributions I'd used, Solus is definitely one of the ones that I would look into. Now, it is a lot lighter on your system tools and options, but it does, in my opinion, give us this perfect balance of some degree of flexibility, certainly more than Gnome gives us, but not overwhelming us like KDE does. We have a very simple menu here, which is a searchable modern menu. Everything is broken down by your different applications. Of course, this works more by clicking rather than hovering. As far as the tools itself, there really aren't a lot of embedded default system tools like you would find inside of KDE or inside of Cinnamon, but we do have desktop settings. Now, this can give us a little bit of complexity because there's actually a couple of different settings panels. And so this is certainly one of the downsides. This settings panel on the right is effectively your Gnome settings panel because, like I said, this is based on Gnome. So we do have this Gnome settings panel over here, but then you also have a desktop settings panel as well. So now we have two different panels. So what does this give us? Well, the desktop settings is effectively like the Gnome tweak tool built in, but some of the features of the tweak tool have kind of broken a little bit over time because they've taken out a lot of functionality out of Gnome, whereas Budgie seeks to restore those, keeping the desktop icons and some other features. So we can adjust our theme settings over here, so you can make any type of adjustments that you might want. We have easy light theme and dark theme setups over here, depending on what your preference happens to be. So you can pick, and there's some more modern-y looking ones, some less modern-y looking ones. So you can kind of pick the types of experience that you want with this guy. Here's some icons as well, cursor icons. And then we have the options for light theme or dark theme. So it's like, what's the difference here and here? It deals with how things will interface. As far as our desktop, we can show desktop icons or hide desktop icons. We can show our various items over here if you want to do that. We can adjust our fonts and our windows so we can control whether you want your icons on the left or on the right. And then, there's just some other options here to play with as well. So with that, we do have panels. So the default, of course, here is panel on the bottom. If you did something like the Ubuntu Budgie, they put the panel at the top because a lot of your Ubuntu distros do put the panel at the top. But you can actually add a panel in both places if you want, and then each panel can be customized individually. So this is where we don't have quite as many options as we get. So one of the things I don't like about it is I don't have the option to use a quick launch type setup like I have in my Linux Mint. Even on Cinnamon 4, we can set it up that way. So we pretty much have just the modern option only, which is okay for some people, not my personal preference. But again, I have other ways around that. Now, we have a variety of different things, and we can add a new applet, so whatever that applet happens to be. The downside is there's not really a lot of other extensibility that you can do. But you can customize. Do you want your list of icons or your list of open applications down here or not? You can turn that on or turn that off kind of at will. It looks like right now I don't think we have that on. Are you going to boot Firefox, or are you going to sit there and blink at me? I just want to get something open. All right, there we go. All right, so you can see now we have two applications open. We kind of get this space saving thing. If you kind of like that, that's okay. But if you wanted to have like the Windows task list going across there, you can go ahead and do that. Is it? I don't think it's task list though. It is. This one here. So now you can see that it kind of put that to the center, but I can go ahead and move it up, so I can just kind of move things around. Or if you want to, be courageous and put it over here, you can do that. So that's kind of what your options are as far as that. Now, one of the great things about this desktop is they have the Raven menu. And so the Raven menu is this guy here. We have over here a variety of different applets. So I love the ability to very quickly toggle your inputs and outputs just by pulling up the Raven menu real quick. We also see the calendar really quickly. And if you're playing some music file, it will show up here as well. We also have the ability here to see any notifications are right over here. So any unread emails. If you're doing something like interfacing with Skype, it should show up over here. And then we can quickly get to our desktop settings over here as well. So this is just a really great desktop environment. This, of course, since it is based on Gnome, it does have the ability to integrate your online accounts. So you can put all your online accounts in here as well, just like Cinnamon. And then all of the other settings over here, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, here's your backgrounds. These are all going to be familiar if you're used to looking at Gnome, which we are going to look at here in a little bit. So that is Budgie. Definitely worth looking at. It is an excellent desktop environment. Number 4, XFCE. So XFCE is a very lightweight desktop. So if you are running something with a lower system specs, or you just don't want a lot of stuff in your, cluttering up your RAM or whatever else, then XFCE is the desktop environment for you. And there are so many different distributions that run this. Of course, I think Manjaro has one of the best implementations of XFCE. We are going to be looking today at MX Linux just because I had this one set up as well while I had the ISO already downloaded. Saved me downloading another ISO file. But MX Linux here is just a great desktop, a great distribution as well. And this one does have a little bit more non-traditional setup of the panel. You can, of course, set the panel on either side. You can put it on the top or on the bottom. This is actually one of the desktops. You can actually put the panel right in the middle of the screen if you really wanted to. I'm not sure what would compel you to do so, but you can should you want to. We do have, like I said, a very lightweight system, and there's not any one specific distro that is the ultimate for XFCE, but it's just such an interesting balance between getting some degree of modernity and maybe some degree of maybe oldness to it. We have launchers that are just like the quick launches in the old classic Windows. Each time you click it, you get a new instance. That's the exact functionality I like. I think you can turn on a more pin type approach as well. I don't know for sure. One of the things that you get inside of XFCE is there are a lot of options inside of your settings. Inside of your system settings and things, and I can never find the actual system settings. Oh, it's always up here. Duh. Always look for it in the menus for some reason. Now this, of course, MX Linux has other settings specific to itself. We're not going to look at those because this isn't about MX Linux. This is about XFCE. So this is your basic default panel in XFCE. So your control settings, they have added things like their MX tools in here. So those, anything that says MX here, you generally would not see. I think pretty much everything else is going to be in nearly any install of XFCE across distros. So we have our appearances, not quite as easy to adjust as some other distros are. Like as far as, it doesn't feel like you have quite as much control over it, but it's okay. We have a lot of different icons to pick from here. So anything from new to older, and of course you can install your own icons as well. So there's your file managers, your appearances, preferred applications, all these different things. So there's a lot of tools here. So our hardware, which this particular distro has some extra tools for graphics. They don't have the driver manager like your Ubuntu-based distros would to look for a variety of drivers. That's okay. There's generally a lot of other fixes you can find. As far as our systems, we have firewall configurations, gparted, Samba for network shares, just a variety of other tools as well. iDevice Mounter if you're using iOS devices, though I think that's specific to MX Linux. So there's a lot of different features in here. Our menu works very much like, this kind of mostly reminds me of the start menu we had in Windows XP. We have a big list of your favorites over here, and then you can narrow in by hovering over the various applications that you can get inside. And of course, you can search for applications here as well. So it is going to be very lightweight. We do have the ability to work off of the desktop. We have our nice icons on side of our menus here, so we can create new files right on the desktop. everything that we want to do. And then, of course, it is very easy to control and adjust everything. So here's here's your different panel settings. So you can determine where the panel is. You can lock it. You can unlock it. You can set the height to be a certain height or width. So if you just want it to be really small somewhere, you can do that. So there's a lot of different options that you can do. And like I said, you can put the panel on the top, on the bottom, on the left, on the right, however you want it to be. So here's a vertical, here's a horizontal, and then you can just determine where it goes. So that is XFCE. It is going to be super lightweight. We do have, like you saw there, some notifications will pop up on it. Work right off the desktop, and just a really great desktop environment for something if you want a really quick, really basic, but easily customizable desktop. MX Linux is a great place to go. It does not support online accounts that I know of. If it does and you are aware of it, please let me know in the comments down below. Number 5, Gnome, sometimes pronounced Gnome. Either one is a correct pronunciation. So Gnome is probably the most modern kind of advanced desktop that there is. It's really focused on people who want to think a little bit differently or work a little bit differently. It's not my personal favorite. However, when I took the time to learn how to use it, I had a lot more respect for it. It's just still personally not for my individual taste. However, there are very good, valid reasons to use it. It is still a great desktop in its own right. And we are going to have a look at Fedora 29 as we look at the Gnome desktop. So the Gnome desktop is simple. It is actually excessively simple. And you can't even put desktop icons on it without extensions. You can't do much of anything without extensions. What you see is what you get. So some distros will have a lot of pre-built extensions already set up. Some of them will not. I wanted to go with this particular build because it has, I don't know if it has any extensions on it at all. So we basically get exactly what Gnome is without anybody messing around with it. So inside of our settings, you can get to our settings up there at the top. This is what our system looks like. And this is, I can't remember which version. So this is 3.30. I think 3.32 is out now, maybe 3.31, I forget. But 3.30 is certainly one of the most recent ones. You can see here we're running Fedora. We just have our basic settings panel over here. You can pick what goes with where. And then everything else, here's Bluetooth. We should have wireless. Of course, I'm not seeing it. It might be under network. I wouldn't be seeing it because I don't actually have a wireless card on here. That might be why. Here we have backgrounds, notifications, and this is one of the things I like about it is you can granularly set the notifications. Not a lot of desktops that have notifications allow you so much granular control over it. So, you know, if you're getting email after email after email all day, it becomes redundant to receive notifications. You can turn off your Evolution emails and notifications and not get those emails anymore. Very good options. So you can also determine and customize where you search. If you do a search function through the search feature of the website or of the desktop rather, where does it go? Does it search the internet? Does it search your contacts? Does it search, pick a place? Regions and language, universal access, of course, online accounts. This is where Budgie and Cinnamon get its online account support from. They're both based on Gnome. You can turn on your privacy section over here to look to see when do you want things to delete, what do you want to save, do you want location services turned on. But if you are a person that wants location services, you have it in this desktop. That's one of the great things about it. So it is a little bit different in that it's set up to be used mostly out of keyboard functionality. So with our keyboard functionality here, we have the ability to come in here and just come in and find your applications you want to run and just do basic search features with the keyboard. Once you have different applications running, of course, you can set them on various different desktops by using a variety of different things. So here I've just moved Evolution onto onto the second of the desktops over here, but the Mozilla is still on the first one. So if you know how to use the keyboard commands, it can get to be a very nice system. You can still toggle with the Alt tabs like you might be used to. And so it is a very interesting, very compelling platform. It's not for everybody. It's not generally for me, but it definitely does have some neat uses to it. You also have the ability here, as you saw, we have this panel over here where you can add your favorite applications, and then this guy here gets this type of feed layout. So if you're kind of coming from a Mac, this is one of the desktop environments you might want to look at. Of course, another one being Pantheon, which we're not looking at in this video, but that's from the Elementary team. You can have a look at Pantheon from Elementary OS. This one here, I think, looks a lot more elegant than that one, but both of them are valid options. Now, you can get an extension, which is going to put this guy down here as a dock, just like Mac would have. So if you are looking for a Mac feel, using this with a couple of extensions will get you a very good system. Now, it does have its own, does not have a lot of built-in tools. Nautilus is the file manager that it's using. Other than that, there's not a lot of other GNOME-specific tools that are packaged with the desktop itself, which means if you want a super minimalist type build, starting with GNOME and just adding the basic applications that you want is actually a really good way to go. So you can see even on this, we have an archive utility, we have disks, we do have a contacts and a calendar built in. Again, if you are logging into Nextcloud, for example, with your online accounts, then your calendar will automatically sync to Nextcloud, your contacts will sync to Nextcloud, and most of the features in Evolution will sync to Nextcloud as well. So it is a very nice desktop. It doesn't jive with my workflow. That's why I don't generally use it. But it is certainly a compelling desktop for the people that want to run with specifically a more keyboard-focused thing, or a variety of other options as well. So these are some things to keep in mind. So those are my top picks for desktops for this year. What are your top picks for desktops? Let us know in the comments down below. So thanks for watching this video from Switched2Linux. Thank you for making it to the end of this Switched2Linux video. You can have a look at another video right on over here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel or to Think Life Media, which is my own personal support page. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.